This podcast was created to educate listeners on the experiences of diverse individuals. However, all opinions expressed by the host or guests do not reflect the overall standing of Tarleton Radio or Tarleton State University.
Hello everyone and welcome to Making Space, the Diversity Dialogue, and I am your host, Cole. This is a biweekly podcast where together we'll have questions answered about socially sensitive topics while learning how to create lasting relationships with diverse people. In honor of Disability Awareness Month, this discussion we'll have is about service dog laws, and how service dogs help mitigate disabilities for their handlers. I have two guests joining me today, Parker Clemens and Avery Smith. You guys can say hi if you'd like.
Hi there.
Hi. They both have service dogs themselves. Parker Clemens is currently studying animal science and has a new dog training business. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And Avery Smith is studying wildlife at Tarleton State University and has a service dog that also doubles as a bed bug sniffing dog. That's really interesting.
I want to train wildlife dogs in the future.
That's very cool. We could have a separate thing about that. That'd be really interesting. I think we're going to go ahead and start off with our vocabulary. Now, the first big one is, what exactly is a service dog?
I would say a service dog is I'm going to broaden this up a little and say a service animal is a task-trained animal to mitigate a single person's disability or disabilities.
Yes.
All right, can we go over just what mitigate means?
To help with?
Yeah, to help to lessen the strain.
Yeah.
Really, to me, service animals are task-trained animals that just help disabled people live a more normal life, as normal as it can get.
To live it to the
quote
standard.
unquote qualify for a service dog, your disability has to impede
Upon daily activity.
Yes, and so your service dog helps aid in those activities.
Right, like going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what does handler mean? Because that is something I already said in the beginning of this podcast, and some people hear it, but not many people know what it means. What does that mean?
I would say the handler is whoever, so it can go two ways for me. It can either be for me, I am a handler because my service dog is mitigating my disabilities, but sometimes the dogs mitigate people's disabilities who are too young to responsibly handle the dog themselves. So their parents will handle and control the dog.
Yes.
So really it's just whoever's controlling the dog and making sure that the dog is present, under control, and well behaved.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We went over a little bit what a disability was, but we want to reiterate that. So it's just something that brings your standard of living down, or something that impedes your ability to do things.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go into the breaking down of the actual word disability. It lowers your ability to function as a quote-unquote
Functional
human.
Okay.
I'm avoiding the word normal
Okay.
because disabilities are normal.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's important to normalize that.
Yes.
Now, what is ADA? Of course, a lot of people, you've heard it. ADA is
The Americans with Disabilities Act.
And the part of the ADA that actually pertains to service animals is Title III.
Yes.
And what is a task?
It is the action that a service animal performs to mitigate the disability.
Tasks specifically are typically trained.
Yes.
However, animals can have natural things that they do, but we normally shape those. And what I say by shape is, let's say your dog has a natural alert to anxiety or something.
Blood sugar.
Yeah, or blood sugar, just anything.
Right, like with diabetes. Alert dogs.
Exactly, but let's say your dog starts nuzzling you, licking you uncontrollably. What we would do to shape that is maybe make it a little more controlled, maybe minus the licking, but and pinpoint the nudging to a certain spot to make that a more reliable alert.
That way we know every time the dog does this action, the
impending thing is about to happen.
Yes.
And so, but tasks are a trained action.
Yes.
And what is public access?
Going to Walmart, going anywhere that people can go that you can't typically take your pet. So any kind of store, a lot of theme parks, movie theaters, restaurants.
But it's the part where somebody with a service dog, a disabled person with a service dog, is legally allowed to go in public where normally an animal wouldn't be allowed.
Yes.
Okay. So basically any place that's not pet friendly.
Yes.
As long as it's not like a kitchen or somewhere that it changes the function of the business.
Okay. Like pools. Like they can't go in pools.
Yeah, they're not, service animals are not allowed in pools.
Yes, they can be around the edge of the pool and stay near you, but they cannot come in the water.
So any private residence is up to the...
Any private residence is up to the owner of the property.
Yes.
All right, so now we're going to zoom into the history part of this podcast. So canine companions have been around for thousands of years. As you may already know, the modern dogs descended from crossbred domesticated wolves somewhere in Europe, although the exact location is highly speculated, but there have been research done, and it's going to be in the Europe area. And why humans started domesticating wolves and breeding them helps set up our discussion. Not only were humans seeking compassion, they were also seeking ways to assist them in their everyday lives.
Yes.
That be hunting, game retrieval, herding livestock,
guarding, protecting.
Right.
Sending messages.
Yeah.
And now the first service dogs related to disabilities were guide dogs for visually impaired individuals in Germany around 1750.
Yes.
And the first service dogs came to America in 1929-ish, and they were seeing eye dogs as well. I believe the name of that program was the Seeing Eye.
Mm-hmm.
And the ADA's latest revision of the laws for service dogs came about in 2010, and I'll go ahead and link in the description that website and some frequently asked questions for you guys. Now, modern-day service dogs can assist with a large number of disabilities, from mobility to psychiatric, and we're going to go ahead and talk about that in the tough questions portion. Let's go ahead and just get started with that. What is the difference between a service dog, a therapy dog, and an emotional support animal? Because plenty of people try to interchange those words, and they do actually have different meanings.
Yes.
Do you want to start with therapy animal?
Yeah, let's start with a therapy animal. So a therapy animal is a dog that has typically gone through a program, some kind of training program, to assist and bring joy to many people on different itemized trips. So they may go to a hospital, a nursing home, a school during finals or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so like there's an advertisement going around of this dog in a hospital. That's going to be like a therapy dog.
Yes.
Okay. And then an emotional support animal?
An emotional support animal is an animal that is for one person. And the person is disabled, but the dog is untrained.
Yeah.
It does not, or the animal that doesn't perform any task.
And does not have public access.
Its presence brings comfort.
Yes. And then a service animal, at least in the United States, is a domesticated dog, so it can't be a wolf or a coyote mix, a domesticated dog breed, or a miniature pony miniature horse that is task trained to mitigate a single person's disability.
Sorry, the reason I made the distinction between pony and horse is because it has to be a breed. It has to be a horse. Yes. Ponies are not allowed to be. They are two different things.
Yes. Sorry.
Why do you think there is just dogs and just miniature horses?
The miniature horses are definitely for people who need a larger dog.
Yeah, typically dog breeds dogs only get so big while also still maintaining a really desirable work drive, which is basically the desire to actually move around, do things, and work for you. Also, miniature horses just live a really long time, and for people who can't handle having to have a new partner every
7
years.
Yeah,
7 to 10 years, a miniature horse would be a great option.
People like me and Avery, our dogs get 5 to 7 years old, we have to retrain a new one. And somebody with a miniature horse can have their working span can be 25, 30 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah, so while we may have 8 to 10 service dogs in our lifetime, people with miniature horses can get 2, maybe 2.5 if they end up needing the one later on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next question. That was a good discussion. I liked that. What animals are allowed to be emotional support animals?
Emotional support animals can technically be any species or breed. Just keep in mind that these animals do not have public access rights, because clearly if your emotional support animal is a goose, birds lack the ability to be potty trained physiologically. They cannot control it.
Yes.
So they're not allowed public access rights because they can spread disease. Rabies vaccinations do not work on them, and several other things.
Yes.
So it's very important that cleanliness and hygiene is active.
Yes. Service animals are kept to extremely high standards of cleanliness.
Yes.
Like, if you go in the mud or something before you go into a store, you're likely not going to go into a store.
No.
Yeah.
You go home and you
I
bathe the dog.
I can think of an exact example. We went to a park one day, and the park had a pond. The dogs got in the pond, got muddy. I wanted to go to a store, but I couldn't go into the store, so I actually made a quick run to the pet store to wash and bathe and groom and dry him so that I could go into the store.
It seems like it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are
They're
very
not-
large responsibilities.
And while you can have a service dog in a sling or something for some alerts and tasks, they're not a dog that you just keep in a purse to look pretty.
Yeah.
They are medical equipment.
Yes.
Let's go. All right. Is it okay for people to pet service dogs? And why if they can't?
In general, I'd say no. There are instances where a handler may allow you to,
Yeah.
but it's honestly best if you don't even ask to pet them.
Yeah.
Because the handler has probably asked that 50 times in one Walmart trip.
There was actually a day that I kept tally. I was asked 37 times.
Oh my gosh.
And I think I had only gone into 3 stores. So, that's about 10 times I'm asked every outing.
You don't get to
So-
go in and just get milk and bread anymore.
Yeah.
Every time you go to a store, it takes so much more time.
Every time I go to a store, my thought process is, are his nails trimmed? Is he clean? Did he eat today? We have to go potty. We have to put our gear on. We have to make sure the gear is all good. We have to make sure he's not sick. We have to make sure I'm not too sick that day. There's a whole process. And then if I go to somewhere and the parking lot's full, I'm honestly too scared to go in there sometimes because I know I'm just going to be badgered again and again and again.
Yeah.
And then every time I go into the store and I hear people's keys jingling, I'm scared that it's somebody's untrained pet that's going to attack my service dog.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have to reroute very quickly because there's a very real chance that it is somebody's untrained pet, and it's happened before.
All in all, I would say no.
Yeah.
Just, you can look, we know our dogs, we know they're cute, but they're not there to be cute. They're not there for anybody else's entertainment. They're not there for our entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
We just need them to get through our day-to-day lives.
Yes.
The same as walking up. You wouldn't walk up and pet someone's wheelchair.
Yeah. If somebody pulls out their inhaler, you're not going to ask what its name is.
Yeah.
All right. What about talking and looking at service dogs? Is that okay?
I would say looking at a service animal is fine. Just remember it's rude to stare and never make eye contact with somebody's service animal.
Yes.
It's very distracting, and don't ever talk to the service animal. If you do have a question, I'd rather not be bothered about my service animal. But on the off chance if you just have to have an answer, ask me.
Ask
Talk
the
to me,
handler.
not my dog. My dog cannot respond to you.
Yes. Also, we need our animals focused on us.
Yeah.
Anytime you or the public talks to our dog, it takes their focus off of us.
And they could miss a life-saving alert.
Yes. And if you have a young dog or one that is still in training, there's that time you have to get them refocused.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, even with our fully trained service
Yeah.
animals now.
I mean, there's recovery time after every interaction.
Now, a lot of people, when they search up service dogs, the first couple things they see talks about a registration. Now, is there a service dog registration, and is it mandatory?
In the U.S., there is not a mandatory registration. In fact, in the U.S., if you're caught with a registration for a service animal and your dog is not a service animal, I know in several states it's actually a punishable crime.
It's the impersonation of a service animal.
Mm-hmm.
And there are safety risks there and a lot of other issues. But getting back to the websites, they are scams. The people who made them know they are scams.
They're specifically preying on those that are ignorant of the laws.
Yes.
To take your money.
So, as service dog handlers, if we ever see somebody with an ID card or saying that their dog is registered, we get our walls go up a little bit because a lot of the time it is a untrained dog, mm-hmm. and untrained dogs can lead to attacks. But there are handlers who are new to the service dog world who fall for these. And it's really sad when disabled people...
I mean, I know even my dog was fully trained. I mean, literally years of training. However, there's not a very regulated system for this. I mean, as much restriction and regulation as there is, while still keeping this available and accessible to disabled people, it can be hard to get information sometimes. Yeah. And I know even I and my grandpa, once my dog was fully trained, decided to get an online registration because every time I went somewhere, they were asking for an ID. And so even I, a legitimately disabled person with a legitimately task-trained service animal, thought I needed a registration. And then I got more involved in the community, and then I was able to realize that this is not a legitimate thing and that this is actually a crime. Thankfully, I had a legitimate service dog, so I was using it technically in a correct way, but it's still something that I recognize now is just better to not have, because then you create further access issues for other service dog handlers. Because
since there is no mandatory federal registration, if somebody with a real service dog goes in and shows an ID, the business then expects the next person to also have an ID.
When it's not required.
Yes. And so it can cause that team, who is in their absolute legal right, to be removed.
Mm-hmm. We talk about seeing eye dogs, and a lot of people assume that's going to be like a Labrador or a Golden Retriever. Are there only certain breeds that can be service dogs, or can any breed be service dogs?
Technically, any breed has the capability. However, only I think it's 10 or 20% of dogs actually have the correct temperament and behavior to become a service dog.
Yes.
The only restrictions that come to breed is that it can't be a coyote or wolf mix. It has to be 100% domesticated dog.
Yes, and that's because rabies vaccines haven't been proven to work on coyote mixes and wolf mixes.
Exactly.
And by temperament, you guys just mean they're not barking at everything? And
some dogs are just naturally aggressive, and sometimes it just comes down to genetics, and these dogs, while you can train them, it's just something that they're going to be prone to. Some dogs are always going to just have too much of a prey drive. Some dogs are just never going to be okay with children. Some dogs are never going to be okay with loud noises.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's some things that are just bound by genetics, as much as I hate to say it.
Yes, there's a reason in the service dog community, which is basically just people who are disabled who are all online.
A ton of disabled people that have gotten together online to
Yes.
have a better sense of community.
Facebook groups.
Yes. There is what's called the Fab Four of service dogs, and it is your labs, like your chocolate labs, black labs, yellow labs, golden retrievers, poodles that can be standard or like any size poodle, and rough or smooth collies, which are the same breed, different coat lengths. But the majority of those dogs in those breeds have the drive to work and the temperament to work. So they are known as the best choice, especially for new handlers.
They have very high success rates.
Yes.
There's just certain things that those breeds have that just make them a better choice for a lot of people.
Now, but also don't get me wrong, the two handlers in this room have two very off-the-wall breeds.
I was about to ask, what breeds are both your service dogs?
So my service dog, and I do not recommend this for anybody.
Neither of us recommend our breed. They are unicorns and they work for us, but they may not work for other people.
Okay, the term unicorn is just thrown out. What does that mean in a service dog community?
Unicorn refers to a dog that is basically like 1 in a million.
Yes.
It's not typical. It's not standard for that mix or breed. It's
to have the temperament to work.
Exactly. That dog is very unique in the
outside statistics.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's an outlier.
I have a Belgian Malinois husky mutt thing. He's great for me. I would never recommend it for anybody else. We have our couples arguments on a very regular basis. But he's pretty great.
My service dog is a husky German Shepherd dog cross.
If you see the common theme, it's husky.
Which I don't recommend. Huskies are also not recommended as service dogs.
Yes, there are people out there with great husky service dogs.
Yes, there are.
Not saying they don't exist. I'm saying that is not the breed most people would want to go to first.
Yeah. It's just harder.
Yes.
Much harder.
And when you're already a disabled individual,
it can be very difficult.
You usually don't want a dog that has a ton of energy.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see the common theme in
like a Great Pyrenees or something.
Yeah, or you see a lot of the common theme in a lot of your Fab Four. They're dogs that, yes, they can get very excited and they can work for hours on end, but they can also sleep all day.
Yeah, they're dogs with a very drive on demand.
Yes.
So it's energy according to what you're wanting for that day, basically.
They're very versatile dogs, where a lot of the breeds that aren't as recommended were bred for a specific purpose that is not walking around or laying around all day.
They're definitely working breeds, and by working I don't mean working as a service dog. I mean working like hard protection work, very high intensive drive herding,
like livestock.
Herding, things like that.
Let's go with how service dogs are trained. Are they all from programs and stuff?
In the U.S., we have the right to owner train our dogs. Service dogs in training don't always have public access rights, but service dogs don't have to come from a program in the United States.
Yes.
You can work with a program, you can work with an individual trainer, you can train the dog yourself. Just keep in mind that there are standards in which your dog does have to follow.
Yes, the ADA, which is again the Americans with Disability Act, has a list of standards that your dog has to meet to be considered a fully trained service dog.
Yes.
In the state of Texas, service dogs in training are allowed in public with their handler or their trainer.
Yes.
And that, but they still have to be completely potty trained.
They still have to behave.
Yes.
And if they don't behave, if you don't make the effort to correct them and fix their behavior, they're allowed to be removed from public.
Yes. And so owner trained service dogs are not just pets that we have put vests on and brought in public.
Program dogs are still very trained and still very well behaved dogs, but I've actually noticed quite a few owner handler trained dogs typically have better behavior because we typically stick with our dogs' trainings, whereas program dogs typically come out of the program fully trained. They'll do really great, but a lot of the handlers that they're placed with are, unfortunately, they are disabled, but they don't have the knowledge or experience to keep up with that training all the time.
This is just a theory.
Yes.
We also, as owner trained service dog handlers, do not have a program's name backing us up.
Yeah.
So our dogs have to be at the top of their game all the time.
Yes.
Because we can't say, or we don't have vests that say
Canine for the Blind.
Yeah, or Canine Companions for Independence.
Yeah.
It's our name on the line.
Now, since you mentioned vests and we mentioned gear earlier, is it required for service dogs to be labeled as service dogs on vests or collars or leashes or whatever?
No.
Not in the United States.
No.
So why do you? I see plenty of service dogs with vests and everything.
So it really kind of varies. For us, I know I have a couple of mobility tasks that require equipment that cannot be done without equipment. However, having something on my dog that labels him as a service dog, a task-trained service dog, an assistance dog, however you want to say it, just not an emotional support animal. He is task-trained.
Mm-hmm.
But it just makes access easier. It seems like anytime I try to go into some place with him without gear, I have a lot of access issues, and they typically don't believe me that he's a service animal, and then I have to pull out my little pamphlet that has my rights listed and the ADA hotline. So it's just one of those things that sometimes just makes things easier and gives a more professional look.
Also, and this is sort of almost goes against the professionalism, there are a lot of young handlers, and even not young handlers, that enjoy dressing up their dogs. Like getting
even
cute.
I do.
Yes.
I mean, I dye my service dog's fur.
I was about to say your dog is pink.
With safe dye, I want to mention that.
Yeah, it's an animal safe plant-based dye. I use the same thing on me as I do him. We typically match. Right now we're both pink. We were both blue.
It's great to see.
But our dogs are allowed to be fun, and gear can be fun, and so that's a big part of it. You can get different colors. You can get bright colors.
One of the ways I often explain it is if somebody can have a blue painted wheelchair with fun little things hanging off and stuff, or glow sticks on their wheelchair, why can't I have a fun vest? Why can't I dye my medical equipment's fur to personalize him more to my wants and things that just make me happy? Because he is with me every day, and while he's not a fashion statement.
Sorry about that, guys.
Sorry, that is the
dog's getting a little restless.
It's just something. It makes it more pleasing to me to have medical equipment that not only helps me but also helps express who I am to the public.
Yes, but to recap, no, gear is not required or anything like that, but it is useful. It's helpful, whether it be a mobility harness that you can hold on to so your dog can help you move around, or a guide harness so that where guide dogs can help their owners navigate.
Now, let's go back. We mentioned public access a little bit before, and we mentioned kind of the struggle and some of the frustration, but a lot of people want to know why service dog handlers are so angry all the time.
I promise you we're not mean.
It's a lot of times when I go out my day, I don't start angry. I'll start off, so maybe sometimes people will ask me, hey, can I pet your dog? And I'll say no. I personally always say yes if it's a child that asks, because I take that as a really good moment to educate the child on what a service dog is and that they're working and they're really important and to not bother them next time. But that's just me. We don't typically start angry, but there's only so many of those interactions that can happen before we just want to get our carton of eggs. And then the majority of our interactions, people do not ask our permission. They just think, oh, cute puppy, and run up and grab, or I've had somebody pick up my service dog. Thank gosh my service dog is well trained and behaves correctly, because if that was not a well trained dog, that dog could have attacked that person and bit their face off. But there's
he is well trained, though.
Yeah. But there's only so many interactions we can go through before we just want to live our lives and get our chores done too.
Yeah. It's also we are disabled.
Mm-hmm.
We're not feeling great. We're tired. We're hurting. If it's psychiatric, you're dealing with paranoia. You're dealing with all of these different things that you have the service dog for. You don't want. It's exhausting dealing with all of that pain or whatever's going on, and then also dealing with the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or there's also instances where people think you're faking it because you're not blind or because you're not in a wheelchair. There's just a lot of negative interactions sometimes.
Yeah.
I know I was standing in the self-checkout of Walmart one time, and there was a man behind me with his children, and he was pointing at me. Now, I was having a relatively not great day. I mean, I could still walk, so I was getting chores done. But this man was pointing at me, talking to his children in a pretty loud but, forced whisper, saying that, see people like that, those people are the liars. They're the crazy people that go around and do some pretty... I'm not going to say what it is because it could possibly be triggering to listeners, but it was a very heinous act. And, sometimes there's just things like that, and things like that can't... I mean, there's no way for it to not upset you or anger you.
I'm sorry that happened.
These things are just... They're not always great interactions, and sometimes there's only so many bad things you can take and handle before you're just...
And so when you have a veteran service dog handler,
mm-hmm.
And by that I just mean somebody, it's probably not their first dog, or if it is, they've been
not
working
military.
Yeah.
They've probably been working that dog for a while. You get a chip on your shoulder with the public. And honestly, it's probably something as a community of handlers we need to work on ourselves, is not losing our temper as quickly. But it is exhausting. And I can't say that it wouldn't happen to anybody. Everybody would eventually snap.
Right, because you see someone coming up with a kid asking to pet, and you just see someone who's going to say something wrong or hurt you or hurt your dog, anything like that.
Yeah. I've had people threaten to take my dog from me before. I mean, as he was tasking even.
For some reason, you bring a dog in public,
and people crazy.
Say really weird things.
Yeah, I guess that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, it's like people almost forget how to function when they see a dog in a place they're not expecting one.
Right, and it's fair because they're cute, but they are also there to do a job. They're not just there to be fun, right?
Yeah.
I know you guys have talked a little bit before, not on this podcast, but being scared of other pets or other emotional support animals in public. Why is that?
I know, at least for me, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for Avery too, our dogs have been attacked multiple times.
Yes.
By these animals in public places. And so it becomes to the point where if a dog is not behaving up to the standard that the ADA puts out, it's terrifying because you don't know when it's going.
Even well-behaved dogs, I get terrified of in public if I don't personally know the handler and the dog.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the times if it's an actual service dog handler, you keep your space.
Mm-hmm.
If you see another handler, you'll go a few aisles down and wait.
It's a very quiet understanding that we kind of just...
Almost like a social understanding between
exactly.
the community of handlers.
a lot of the times people who are bringing their pets in public or bringing their emotional support animals in public, they try to come up to you with their dog.
Because they think, oh, another person
with a dog.
Because you know, they don't understand what it's really like to be disabled and to. I mean, while I love my service dog and my service dog has provided me with so much freedom and independence, they don't understand the real burden of having a service dog.
Yeah. And also, they want our dogs to be friends, and like our dogs can't play while they're working.
Yeah. Again, they could miss a life-saving alert.
Also, for most dogs, and at least mine, and I'll admit this, dogs are a major distraction.
Yes.
They're one that takes a long time for a dog to recover from.
The recovery time is very high when they see another dog.
Especially if they've ever been attacked or charged in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes, you have to work through their fear, so they can't take care of you in that instance.
I know for myself, my service dog has been attacked on a couple different occasions. One of the times the dog was falsely labeled as a service animal. The other times they were just pets that the handler decided to bring into Walmart. But I realized a lot of the time it's not even then your dog's fear. I realize now my service dog never really became scared of dogs. However, I did. And because my dog is a very connected dog and he really feeds off of my emotions, mm-hmm. he did become really intensified and he'd hone in and hyperfixate on dogs, not because he was interested in them and because he was scared of them, but because I was so terrified.
All of a sudden, because we're scared, our dogs are picking them up as a danger.
Right.
Exactly.
At that point, it would be compromising your medical equipment.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It'd be like having someone come up and kick your wheelchair and break it.
Yeah. And that's not saying, like I said, when we see, this is when we see any dogs in public, even another team, but we just give other teams space.
Yeah.
But
we understand that we don't necessarily know they're a real service dog team. They have the same understanding with us, and it's kind of one of those things where we just rather not. Both of our dogs or animals are working. We need to stay working. We need to keep everybody focused. We just want to get things done, so we'll just kind of work around it.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen a lot of service animals and service animal handlers tend to flock together, though. Birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah.
People with like minds or hobbies that are similar or just things about them that are similar to other people. It's nice to be around other people with those experiences and those mindsets because you're able to share those experiences and it's nice to have somebody that you can relate to.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a trust that builds with
Yes. Once we meet a handler and their dog, the anxiety goes away.
Completely.
Like the nerves go away. We can see that person in public and not get fearful.
Yeah.
But it also, when there's a group of you, it's almost easier to tell people to leave you alone.
Sometimes I think it's too easy. Like I know when I'm with just like one or two service dog handlers, things typically go pretty well. There was one experience though where I went to a meetup and some of the handlers got, in my opinion, a little too vocal and a little too forceful about things with the public. I mean, that's just my opinion, but it definitely does make it easier to just stand up for yourself.
Yeah, when you're not the
lone wolf.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have two or three other handlers with you, they understand. Even if you don't share the same disabilities, they understand what being disabled is like. They understand having to take breaks throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Our dogs enjoy being around other dogs that they trust.
Yes.
And you'll see them almost have a little more fun throughout the day.
Yeah.
You can take breaks outside of the public place and let them romp around and play a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not always working.
Yeah.
No, our dogs get playtime. Trust me. Sometimes
they
too
get
much.
to be dogs. They get to be dogs. I know at least before COVID-19 and the lockdown and quarantine, I used to go to dog parks all the time and just let my dog, really just not work and go play with other dogs. And there was one time I remember he wouldn't leave my side, and I was actually getting kind of irritated that he wouldn't leave me alone and go be a dog and play with other dogs.
Yeah.
Right. Now, there is a question I found about having multiple dogs. Can people have multiple service dogs, and can they have both of them at the same time out in public?
So there's this thing called tandem teaming, and it means when you have more than one service dog. In the U.S., you're allowed to do this, but the service dogs have to do different tasks. They have to mitigate different things. So if you have 2 dogs and they both only do blood sugar alerts, then you're only really supposed to have one of those dogs.
Unless you were training the successor.
Yeah, unless the other one is in current training or something
Yes.
like that. But if they're both fully trained and they're both doing the same task, it's not allowed.
For instance, you may have somebody that is diabetic but also needs a mobility dog.
Yes.
And so they may have a mobility dog with them so that they can brace, and maybe it picks things up for them. And then they'll have another dog with them that's a diabetic alert dog. And that is completely legal and allowed.
Yes.
Also, if, in a few years, when I get my next dog, I will take my current one out in public with my younger one, because dogs do learn from each other.
Yes, I know. I'll be doing the same thing. In fact,
Yeah.
I think we'll probably be doing that around the same time even.
Our dogs are the same age.
So, we didn't mention this earlier, but I wanted to cover it. Hopefully I only got about 2 more questions for you guys. But this one is, what disabilities can service dogs help with?
There's a nearly infinite list.
Can you all give some examples?
Of course, we can start out stereotypically and go people who suffer from vision loss, or they're
Hearing
blind,
loss.
People who are hard of hearing, veterans with PTSD.
Yeah.
Not saying that PTSD is only for veterans, because there are people.
I'm pretty open with my disabilities. I have CPTSD. I have POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and then I have a couple others.
And POTS is something to do with the heart.
Yeah, POTS messes with my heart. Yeah, when I go from standing up to laying down, too much exercise, it messes with my balance, my heart rate especially. And it can lead into other things, and it's manageable, but it's I am disabled by it, and my service dog does have some tasks that pertain to it.
And those aren't visual, so it's not something you can really go off visually.
These are not something you can look at me and go, oh, this person clearly has this disability. Unfortunately, it's not like I'm blind, and even a lot of blind people, you can't always tell that they're blind.
Yeah, because not every blind person is 100. The majority of blind people do not have full vision loss.
Yeah, and a lot of time it's not cataracts where there's a graying or silvering of the eyes. A lot of times it's something just genetic, and you just can't see it. Something didn't form right, whatever it may be. But basically, we're not an amputee in a wheelchair. You can't see our leg is gone, therefore we're clearly disabled or whatever.
Where
it
doesn't
work like that.
Like the disability, because I have what's called a multi-purpose service dog.
Yes, we both do.
I have psychiatric disabilities. One of them being I am autistic, and then there's a long list of others that I'm not super open about.
Okay, that's fine.
And then I also have some physical disabilities, which I also don't talk about. But he tasked for both of those, or all of those. I was trying to think of more, because the question was, what disabilities can they help with?
Yes.
If we want to get into psychiatric, they can help with anxiety, autism.
Anxiety being something that a lot of people have anxiety, but
or feel anxious sometimes.
Or feel anxious or stressed, but this level of anxiety is debilitating.
Yes.
And keeps you from doing things that abled able-bodied people could do.
Yes. Again, a disability being a condition that stops you from being able to perform all aspects of life.
You can have an ESA for anxiety, but that anxiety may not debilitate you completely from going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm talking more, you'd have to have, like, very serious generalized anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
Or...
One thing that I'm very open with people about this. If you have debilitating social anxiety, a service dog is not for you, because it only draws more attention and more stress in social situations.
Yeah. I was gonna definitely wrap around to that, because we were talking about all the disabilities that they can help with, and honestly, it's a ton. It's too many to list.
There is a huge list on ADA, and again, I'll link the ADA.gov and the service dog frequently asked questions all in the description below for you guys.
But what's different is that there are a select few disabilities that a service dog makes it worse. A very large one of those being social anxiety or agoraphobia.
And agoraphobia is not being able to leave the house.
Yes, the fear of leaving the house. But it can also have a lot to do with, like, people seeing you.
Yeah.
Paranoia can make it worse, because when you have a service dog, you're the focal point of people's attention in public.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's eyes are literally on you, so
yes,
would not help with paranoia, but does help with a lot of other different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is going to be our last question for now. Thank you guys so much. What rights do businesses have in regards to service animals?
So businesses are allowed to ask us 2 questions.
And the 2 questions need to be worded a very specific way.
Is that a service dog? And you answer yes or no. If you answer no, I don't know why you have your dog animal in public.
Leave.
Maybe they don't know it's pet friendly or not. That could be a possibility.
Okay. But the follow-up question is, what task is it trained to perform? And they cannot ask you to prove this.
Yeah, they can't ask you, and this is, sometimes where I like it and I also don't like it. But that's me as a handler, and each handler will have a different viewpoint on that.
Yeah.
But they can ask what tasks it is, what the dog performs to mitigate your disabilities.
Yes.
The dog, let's say you're diabetic. So you could say, he does blood sugar alerts, or she does blood sugar alerts. If you're diabetic and you have a guide dog for guiding, a blind person or somebody with vision loss, and you as a diabetic do not have vision loss, that service dog technically cannot be a service dog for you, and it doesn't have public access rights with you, and so you could be removed if they were able to prove that you had no vision loss, etc., etc.
Yes.
But and if you decide to not tell them what tasks, you can be removed.
Yes.
You have to comply with these.
And I know that there's a lot of people who their answer to that will be, well, it's a medical alert dog.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say what it's alerting to.
Exactly.
And if you don't, the business has full rights to remove you.
Mm-hmm.
They also have the rights to remove you if your dog is posing a disruption to business.
Yeah. And this is one thing where it can get really kind of wishy-washy, because not many, but some animals do have some kind of vocalization as alert. So a bark to, let's say, a blood sugar alert. Your blood sugar is getting too high, so your dog barks at you. This is one of those tasks that is only so reasonable, because while, yes, the dog is performing a trained task, the dog, by barking, is also causing a disruption to everyday flow and happening within public.
Because the ADA states that it never says that they cannot bark. It says they have to be under control.
And not cause a disturbance to public everyday function.
And so some people will argue that as long as it's a one bark and the alert is done, that it's allowed. And Others will say, any barking at all, remove the dog. And so there's quite a few gray areas. Usually a business will not remove you for a bark or two. Dogs get startled. They are dogs. But they can remove you instantly, and in my opinion should, if your animal uses the restroom in the store.
Oh, yes.
Whether that, and trust me, it happens to the most well-trained dogs, but they need to go home. If they're having that much of an off day, they need to go home. So using the bathroom in a store, they can be removed for vocalizing uncontrollably.
Regression or aggression and reactivity.
Yes.
As well.
And if they are not your task trained service dog.
Yeah. And they're not task trained for your disability.
Also, if the business is a place like a church,
Like
they
a private business.
A private business, they are not required to allow you.
Churches are also one of those things where it comes to the division of religion and state, or church and state. I'm not sure how exactly it works. But churches are one of those places that can legally deny you just because they don't want dogs. Some religions do have very strong oppositions to dogs or other animals. Whatever the reason may be,
they are allowed to.
Just know churches are one of those people and places that are allowed to deny you.
Yes.
And they do not have to have a legitimate reason.
Very quickly, is there anything else you would like the public to know about handling service dogs, or about how to approach you? Or
I want to reiterate on something Avery said earlier. If you are going to talk to me and my dog as a team, talk with me. Talk with the handler.
Yes.
Please. It is preferred if you just let us go on our day. We just want to go home and binge watch shows on Netflix.
just like you.
Just like you.
But,
our medical equipment's fuzzy and cute.
And another thing leading off of that is, if you do initiate a conversation with us and it happens to be about our service animal, let's say, for example, you ask what their name is. First off, don't ask what their name is, because a lot of people's first instinct after they hear a name, whether you want to admit it or not, is to repeat the name and, quote unquote, to just kind of test it out on your tongue. And a lot of that time, it does distract the dog, and the dog will look.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things, you can ask about the dog, just don't ask things that could potentially distract the dog, you know. Don't say the dog's name, don't speak to the dog.
Don't get upset if the handler doesn't want to talk.
Yeah, I mean, we have bad days. We have days where we just want to get our eggs.
Yeah, we definitely.
And there are disabilities that cause nonverbal
yes.
to happen.
There are.
As somebody who goes nonverbal.
Parker and I are both on the spectrum and both go nonverbal.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Now, we went over a lot of information, and there are still plenty of questions, answers, and material out there about minority groups. And if you would like to learn more, or maybe we didn't cover something, please follow us on our social media. That's at the Planet 100.7 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I think they also wanted to mention their Instagrams.
I'll just have her put mine in the description.
Both of our Instagrams will be in the description.
If you have any questions,
ask, message, whatever.
If you ask something online,
it's much easier for them to answer if you do go through their social media, just because they're used to people asking them questions there.
And as much as we don't like being asked things in public, we love educating people and helping people understand and learn more about service animals.
Thank you so much for joining us on this month's episode of Making Space. Until next time, folks, be safe out there.
This has been a Tarleton Radio Network podcast with production from AJ Heyer and Taylor Welch. Find more great shows by searching Tarleton Radio Network wherever you get your podcasts.